every project I've ever worked on only started because I started messing around on something, and then it was like, oh, maybe this could be a rap song, and next thing you know, I'm making rap music. Or maybe this could be a song that sounds like I'm Bob Dylan and I'm singing about my dog's eyes being big and bright. That turned into the Pup Pups. So, you just never know where something's going to go unless you start.
Welcome back to Second Verse, where we talk with indie artists who found a new chapter in music, whether it's their second act or their seventh. I'm your host, Becky Boyland, singer-songwriter and StoryBrand brand messaging expert. I am out of the studio traveling right now, but I will be joined in the studio by David Rosen, a film composer, instrumental artist, podcaster, and the mastermind behind comedy rock project, the Pup Pups. From growing up in his family's record store to composing for dozens of films, producing over 600 podcast episodes, and crafting songs sung by his dog, yes, really, David's story is as eclectic as it is inspiring. We'll talk about how every creative detour can feed the next, how to build long-term relationships with collaborators, and why the work that brings you joy first is what will sustain you. Whether you're dreaming about scoring films or just trying to find your next musical spark, this conversation is packed with ideas, encouragement, and just the right amount of fun and ridiculousness. So let's dive in. Welcome, David. Thank you so much for being on Second Verse today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's going to be fun.
I love that your story is really an example of how there can be a second act, a third act, a fourth act, all kinds of other successive musical ventures and creative ventures. And there doesn't have to be a pause necessarily. And you have quite a story, but let's start at the beginning like I do with most folks. When did music first come into your life, and how did you fall in love with music?
So I was always surrounded by music since I was little because my dad owns a record store called Wax Trax Records. It was originally in New York, and then it was in the Poconos in Pennsylvania where I grew up. And then we moved it all out here to Las Vegas. That was much later. So I was always there in the store surrounded by vinyl. Any music that I could possibly want to listen to was right there. I didn't have to go to a store and buy it or anything like that. And that was, of course, pre-streaming or any of that stuff. So music was just always around 24/7 for me. So I guess I was just always into it at some level. The kind of switch flipped on, though, when the Wayne's World soundtrack came out. Like, that's kind of when I was at that age. I mean, I think I was probably like 12 or 13 at that time. And, that was the age where it was like music was just this thing that was all around too. It was like, okay, I love music. I'm into this, and music is probably going to be a big part of my life from here on out.
Oh, that's incredible. I can't imagine growing up in a record store, and that had to be not only so incredible to realize that you were surrounded by that, but it sounds like it still took you a little while to figure out that this is a pretty amazing life to be surrounded by all of this music everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, you know how it is, like with any industry, even music. If it's your parents' thing, you're just kind of like, oh, I'm going to go play video games, or like, whatever the other thing is that you're going to like get into. But everyone comes back to music eventually, I feel like.
I think so too. Although rumor has it that some people don't want to be musicians, and I don't understand how that can be a thing.
I think they're just saying that.
Yeah. They don't want anybody to know yet, but they're going to come out with their record sooner or later.
Sure. Yeah.
So then you did come around to it and it became your passion, but actually you really started as a teen. So talk about those early days.
Yeah, I had some friends that, like, we weren't really interested in starting a band in the traditional sense of each of us learns an instrument and let's get together in a garage and make music and then go do some shows. Like, we all were really inspired by like the industrial artists of the 90s, like the Ministry and the Nine Inch Nails and like all that kind of stuff. And the idea that you could make music essentially yourself with a computer, with a synthesizer, with all those kinds of things. So we all just were doing our own thing, but kind of encouraging each other. And so we were all like kind of developing in tandem, I guess. And I still have some friends from that time that we still send each other, our projects, and we still support each other in that way. But yeah, it started off trying to do that, basically, to be one of those kinds of electronic musicians. But in the back of my mind, like I knew that I love film music. Like film music was super, super influential to me, and it was something that I was always really excited about. And so, even though I wasn't even like remotely in a place that I could possibly make music for film, I was like, well, maybe that's something I could eventually make my way towards. But I also had no idea that I would eventually make albums of instrumental music that would blend all these different kinds of influences and genres together. And I, obviously didn't know I was going to do film scores. I didn't know I was going to do this whole side project of songs about my pets that we'll get into at some point here. I didn't know I'd get into podcasting. Not that that was a thing yet back then, but like all these different things, you just kind of, you get into the general world of entertainment and media and art and kind of just see which things kind of speak to you and which paths you end up going towards. And it just was kind of like all over the place right from the get-go. I was just trying to do as much stuff as I could within music, because each thing, even if it was a dead end or even if it was just for fun or whatever it was, like each thing fed the other things. It's like you're developing skills by working on this kind of music that kind of help with this kind of music, and like everything just feeds into each other if you're going in with an open mind and just trying different things constantly.
Oh, for sure. And I'm curious, what kinds of DAWs or what was available to you when you were getting started?
So I started with Cakewalk Pro Audio 4. That was, so this would have been in 97, end of 97, beginning of 98. I was Cakewalk Pro Audio 4. That's what I started with. I don't remember what my MIDI keyboard was, but I had some kind of MIDI keyboard. I had a guitar that I couldn't play at all. And it was just starting with that. And I stayed with Cakewalk for a long, long time. I switched about 5 or 6 years ago. I switched over to PreSonus Studio One, and that's what I'm using to this day. But I always loved Cakewalk, and it's what I started with. I became so comfortable with it. I had a few jobs over the years in studios, and they'd always be trying to force you to learn Pro Tools, and like I'd learn the basics as little as I could possibly do, because I'm like, but I'm really good with this. What do I need to learn another software? But yeah, eventually it became time to switch though. But yeah, no, it was really cool using Cakewalk, and you had like lots of really great little packed in VSTs. They were called like DXIs at the time, I think. Something other
I think
than
so,
VST.
yeah.
Yeah, and then I, would slowly start adding on more and more to the collection, some of the native instrument stuff and all the things that everybody knows at this point. But yeah, just kind of amassing that collection of millions of sounds and little virtual instruments to play with and to just figure things out with constantly. And Cakewalk was a really fun software, and I'm glad that it's still around. Like, I know they were like almost going to go out of business at one point. Well, they kind of did. They got bought, and then they became a free thing, and now they actually are like another full-fledged DAW again. And like I couldn't stand that kind of uncertainties. That's why I jumped ship at the time. But Studio One's awesome though, so I'm glad I'm with Studio One nowadays.
Yeah, it's quite amazing, the progression of how everything has changed and what DAWs used to be. And I mean, I remember starting with Reason when it didn't actually record. And so they created a companion called Record.
Yeah.
And then eventually had to bundle it all in there. And of course, it didn't use external VSTs. So it was very niche, very isolated from everything else. But it was pretty cool. And I liked it for a long time. And the funny thing was, one of the last times that I played with it now as a full-fledged DAW that's well used and well loved, it actually sounds better. People can fight me on this, but it actually sounds better. I had a plugin that I was very familiar with, and I dropped it into Reason, and I could not believe how much better it sounded, but it was just too much for me to go and switch back to that. But when people say that DAWs don't sound different, they really do sound different.
Yeah, it's hard to like quantify exactly what that difference is, but there's also going to be a different kind of inspiration when you're like playing with them and you're like just kind of finding your way around. They kind of lead you in different directions, and you're going to do something different in one than you are in the other, even though it's basically just something to record and edit with. It's just you're going to be a different musician depending on what you're using.
That's really insightful, and that's totally true. It is an instrument. We play our DAWs if we do it right, and yeah. I think that's a great way to look at it, and I think it's why we do get so attached to not just a workflow, obviously, that we get accustomed to, but sometimes just changing to another platform doesn't feel right.
Right. No, absolutely. And then sometimes, like in the case of me, when I jumped ship to Studio One, as much as I was like, I was so gung ho about like, I'm a cakewalk guy. I'm never going to not be a cakewalk guy. Jumped to Studio One and I swear my music got so much better within like 6 months. And I was like, maybe I should have been looking around and just seeing what's out there for a while. I shouldn't have just been so stuck on just one thing, you know?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It is an impressive platform, that's for sure. I'm an Ableton Live girl, but there are
Yeah.
some things that I do like about several other DAWs that I miss, but they finally keep adding those little things that make me say, okay, yep, I'm going to stick with what I know and what I love, but there's
Yeah.
a lot of really great stuff out there. And I think that that's a good illustration for anybody who wants to get started, that just pick one. Just pick
Yeah.
one, roll with it, learn it as best you can so that you can make all this really great music. And they're all going to get you to the right endpoint if you just keep going. And then if they don't, then you'll have a good knowledge base to jump ship to something else.
Yeah, you shift when you have to, but in the meantime, just you got to pick something, or else you're just not doing anything. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So tell us about your cinematic music and just dive into that.
Yeah, I've been scoring films now for, well, over 15 years, like closer to 20 years at this point. But in like the 2000s is when I like really started to try to get into it. And then it was in the 2010s that I really started picking up gigs. And I've been just pretty much constantly finding more and more gigs since then. And I've scored at least multiple dozens of short films. I've also scored probably like a dozen or two features, had music and television. I also put out these albums of instrumental music that are my way to put myself out there as an artist, and they reflect my biggest influences and basically what I want to put forth is what David Rosen sounds like as an artist. So at this point, I have 8 albums out, and I've got another one coming out at the end of this year, and it blends the stuff that I'm doing with film music with other kind of influences that I normally wouldn't be able to kind of fit into a film because, obviously when you're scoring a film, number one goal is support the film. Like you want it to be what's right for the movie. So I can't go and throw a guitar solo in there just because I want to, So like this is a chance for me to like, spread my wings and do whatever I want with my music. But I love scoring films. Right now I'm doing a buddy cop movie, which is something a little bit outside of my my comfort zone because I normally do a lot of thrillers and dramas and like a lot of dark stuff. And so this is me getting kind of funky and having a good time with it, which is it's been fun. It's been a little bit of a challenge, but it's been a lot of fun. And I've got another film lined up right now that's kind of like a B horror kind of trashy werewolf kind of thing that's coming pretty soon, and it's going to be a lot of fun to really go crazy with. But yeah, I mean, film score is just such a cool medium because it's like it could go in so many different directions depending on what the film calls for, and you get to really just try interesting things. And like I said, when I first got into making music, I was never interested in like starting a band or anything like that. Like the idea of it's great. Everybody who likes collaborating with musicians do it because it's awesome. But I'm just not really a band guy. I'm not a collaborate with other musicians guy. And I do love, though, collaborating with filmmakers. I love the idea of them kind of giving me a rough idea of what they want. And, they might not know how to speak music, but they can speak vibes or whatever of what they're going for. And then me saying, that sounds cool. How about this? And then we kind of come to our middle ground of what we're looking for, and everything kind of falls into place. And it's a really fun collaboration for me, collaborating with a filmmaker coming from 2 different like areas, and it all just kind of comes together into something that's really cool.
That sounds amazing. And was it a direct pathway? How did you end up moving into film scoring?
Right. Yeah. So I started off with those like initial tracks that I was just making, trying to be an electronic industrial guy, and not even coming close. But one thing kind of led to another. And, everywhere I went, I'm like, yeah, I'm a musician, even though I'm not really like putting anything out there or anything like that. I'm just playing around. One thing leads to another. You meet the one person, and meet the next person, you meet the next person. I end up getting a gig scoring a friend of a friend's short film, even though I wasn't really prepared to do it yet. And I was just like, well, I'm going to try. And it came out pretty cool, and it's just that one gig that kind of leads you to, well, now I want to do this again. So any chance I get to talk to another person that is in film, whether they're a director, whether they're an actor that's working on a project and they're like, oh yeah, I know that they are looking for music, whatever it is, it's a chance to kind of like push yourself. And yeah, it's definitely not a straight line though, because as far as my career, I mean, I was producing rappers for a while. I was in a comedy rap group, which we don't need to talk about that because that's a whole other lifetime ago. I was developing my instrumental music that I would start for my first album. But along that path, I was meeting collaborators that would really kind of push me to try new things with music. And all of that would lead to me being like good enough really to try to push myself into film score work. And once, like I said, one gig came, it kind of helped because it was like a confidence boost, I guess, in that I could reach out to someone and say, hey, I know you're making this movie. Are you looking for a composer? Or if I saw classified saying that they're looking for a composer, like actually taking that step and writing them. And there was a lot of gigs that just came from just hanging around online and finding whatever I could find. And then a lot that came from just being around and just meeting people and all that kind of stuff. It really just kind of comes from everywhere.
And I think what's so powerful about that is not only that it has a lot to do with who you know, and not in a sense of having to reach the upper echelons, but of just being a cool person that can connect with other cool people and follow this path. And also that journey of finding things that you tried them and then discovered, I really like this, and this can be something that I can continue to do long term. And that should be really inspiring to anybody who's trying to figure out, how do I not only make it in this business, but how do I find what I really like as opposed to what everybody tells me I should like or what I think that this looks like, because there are so many different avenues to music.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like I was saying earlier, one thing definitely, even if it feels like very different from another thing, they feed each other really well. Even when I was producing rap artists here in Las Vegas, like that was me being out there on the networking side of things, because I would be at their shows and I would be meeting people and I would be talking to people, or it would be me learning how to master my own music because I want it to sound good once they finish the song, and that's something I might not have learned if I was just simply composing a piece and then just sending it off or whatever. And so I'm learning all these new skills by doing this one thing that ends up helping with the other thing. And then once I started on my albums, it's like learning how to complete a musical idea is, each of these tracks, these instrumental songs that they don't have lyrics, but they do feel like finished pieces of music. And so the idea of being able to finish something is something that's crucial for film scoring too, because you need to know, like, this feels right. This feels like it's where it needs to be. You're not going to keep going and building it up and making it overpower the film, but it's also not too early, not too unfinished at that point. So it's like everything kind of feeds into the understanding of what you want out of the music for all these different kinds of projects.
And I have to imagine that being eclectic, just by virtue of that experience, is super helpful when it does come to scoring not only different types of films, but different genres. And even if there is something that veers within within the context of a particular film or project, and that gives you that ability to come in from different angles and just try new things, especially since you're, I'm assuming, getting something that has temporary tracks or maybe nothing at all.
Yeah, it just depends on the project. Sometimes they send it with temp tracks and sometimes not. I prefer not, just so I can just kind of go in there and just go exactly what I'm thinking without getting something in my head. But I mean, if they already are working with something, that's fine. I work with that too. But definitely once you get in there, you want to be able to kind of just think on your toes and try some stuff. And yeah, sometimes you're like, oh, I did that one thing that one time, or I used that one software that let me, do this cool effect or something like that. And I think that something like that would fit here. And I would have never known that that was even an option or even a thing that I could like look for. I'd be, I don't know, Googling it or something if I hadn't already messed with it for this other project over here. So yeah, again, everything just kind of feeds in.
That's awesome. So you probably use more of the plugins than a lot of us have sitting on our hard drives.
Yeah, I'm as guilty as anyone though of buying every Black Friday, and then I have way too much. But yeah, I use a pretty wide range of stuff. I use a lot of the Native Instrument stuff. I use a lot of Omnisphere on a lot of my stuff. A lot of the usual suspects. Probably some smaller things that people aren't as into, but yeah, it's lots and lots of different VSTs and the instruments, the plugins, the different effects, and all those kinds of things, and just trying to get somewhere with it and trying to figure out what works for whatever project it is.
I love that so much. So then you have this very interesting project with your pets.
Yes. Yeah. The Pup Pups is my comedy rock group with my dog Harvey, my 17 and a half year old dog Harvey, and our cats. And it's something that has been like a passion project of mine. I started it over 15 years ago when he was just a puppy. It took a long time because, quite frankly, I wasn't good enough at the guitar to get the ideas in my head down. And also, I was busy. That was like the timeline of exactly when I was breaking into scoring films and doing all the other stuff in music that I've been doing. So to dedicate all my time to making silly songs about my pets was, a little crazy. But somewhere along the line, though, I got to a finished album back in 2023. And since then, I've already finished 3 more albums in the last year and a half because I'm just like, I don't know, I'm just having so much fun with it. And it's totally a just for me thing. It's like one of those things, and it's out there. And I actually got the last one pressed on vinyl, and I sold enough copies that it paid for the pressing. So it's like, hell yeah, I can't complain. But it's just something that makes me smile, and I just have so much fun doing. And if you were to look at my Spotify play history, it's like embarrassing how much of my listening is the Pup Pups. It's just like nonstop. But yeah, they were my number one listened to artist last year on the Spotify Unwrapped. It's so stupid. But yeah, it's so much fun though, because obviously we already are talking about film scoring, how it's like, you got to support the film. That's number one. So that's what I'm doing. And I do release some of my film scores as soundtrack albums. So, that's what they are. My David Rosen albums are, I kind of, as jolly and goofy of a guy as I am, my David Rosen albums are very like dark and kind of melancholy. And, that's just kind of the vibe of music that I love. And so I'm not going to make a song on a David Rosen album that sounds all of a sudden like some goofy rock song. That's just not going to happen. I don't have an opportunity to do that. So with the Pup Pups, I have a song that sounds like Huey Lewis in the News all of a sudden. And then I have a song that sounds like, I don't know, like Genesis. And then one that sounds like the Dead Kennedys. Like, it's just all over the place, me getting to try new things. And it's so much fun. I just got a whole new guitar for it. And I'm like, I got to just jam and try new things. And for anyone who's interested in the Pup Pups, basically the songs are all about just the silly, fun, like eccentricities of pets and just them, begging for snacks or sniffing butts or playing with tennis balls, whatever pets do, all the crazy stuff. And some of the songs are sung by my dog Harvey. He has a voice, and so he sings in his voice, and he also barks, of course, because he is a dog. And then some of the songs are me and just a variety of voices, just whatever the song calls for. I might be a blues guy on one song, I might be a classic rock guy in another song, just whatever it needs to be. There's a lot of Tom Petty-ish songs throughout the albums. And then one of my cats sings. The other one's just kind of meow on songs, but one of my cats does sing. But yeah, it's totally ridiculous. And the 4th album is about to come out. And honestly, I'm in the middle of scoring this feature right now. And I've got this other feature lined up. And I've got this new David Rosen album that's like 80% done, which will be out at the end of the year. But all I can think about right now is getting back to more Pup Pups. It's like all I want to do.
You gotta follow the muse,
That's right. And Harvey's 17 and a half. So, I mean, he's, we don't know how long he's going to be here. And like, will the Pup Pups continue after he's gone? Probably. But at the same time, it's going to be tough because he is the lead singer of the band. And so, how many bands continue on once the lead singer goes? It's a tough thing. But, there's so many ideas to get into. And of course, the cats, I could do a whole album just about them. So.
Oh yeah, I would want to hear that for sure. I had a 19-year-old cat. She recently, I had to say goodbye to her, but she was my studio cat.
Yeah,
she loved to actually sit by the bass pedal of the drum kit, which I thought was a very interesting place for her to hang out. But she used to enjoy that when she was a little bit younger. But my question is now: does Harvey is he work for hire or does he get, splits?
Right. That is the question. Luckily, because he's so old, like he's just sleeping most of the time, so I could kind of sneak it out without like getting any kind of contract signed with him. Like he just doesn't realize it. But yeah, if anybody else wants Harvey on their album, though, they're going to definitely have to like go through his lawyer, and we'll get some real good contracts going on that for sure. Yeah.
Well, he gets room and board, so he's well supplied for this project.
Yeah, and all of his medicines he's on, and his vet bills, which they're way more than any of my studio bills. I'll tell you that much.
They really do start to mount. That's for sure.
Yeah.
We'll be back with more after this break. Second Verse is sponsored by Attitude Creativity. Many indie music artists don't have a website that grows their audience and reflects who they are, so they get lost in the noise of streaming. Marketing and brand messaging with Attitude Creativity helps boost your brand and build a site that hits all the right notes. You want to be an artist who stands out from the crowd, and to do that, you need your music to be heard. If your website doesn't reflect who you are or make an impact, you feel like a singer who's been handed a pair of drumsticks instead of a mic. You deserve a website and brand messaging you can be proud of, and that doesn't take time away from your music. As an artist like you, I understand how overwhelming websites and marketing can be. And that's why, putting on my other creative hat, I put my decades of marketing and development experience to work for you. You'll no longer have to apologize for your website. You'll look and feel like a professional with a custom story branded website you can be proud of. And right now, you can get a head start with my free downloadable EPK blueprint and start building your electronic press kit to promote your music. Head to attitudecreativity.com/blueprint to get your copy. That's Attitude, ATTITUDE, creativity.com/blueprint. Second Verse is brought to you by Singing Straw. Oh, you caught me in the middle of a vocal warm-up. This is one of my favorite ways to wake up my vocal cords before a singing session or even a nice long conversation for the Second Verse podcast. It's the Singing Straw, a simple but powerful tool for straw phonation, a vocal technique that promotes healthy vocal cord closure and a gentle but mighty way to increase range and identify areas to work on. For me, it was key to regaining my voice after vocal cord paralysis. But you don't have to wait until a vocal injury to use it. In fact, I recommend that you don't. Make the Singing Straw part of your daily routine, and you'll be amazed what your voice can do. Check it out at secondversepod.com/singing straw. What other projects do you have going on, as well as the films and the Pup Pups that we've enjoyed talking about?
Over the last 10 years or so with these albums, I've been also, I've talked about the collaboration with filmmakers to score their films, but a really cool way that I've been like kind of getting out there with my music has been kind of the other way around. I've been collaborating with filmmakers to create music videos for my instrumental tracks from the albums. And since I don't play out, like I'm not going to go do concerts of this stuff or anything like that, it's been a really great way to get me out there and to get people to hear my music, because, without doing shows, it's really hard to just like scream into the void of social media and expect for people to check it out that way. So I have been making these music videos, and they've gotten into film festivals, won some awards at festivals and things like that, screenings at movie theaters that I, try whenever they're screening places. If I can make it to them, I try to. But yeah, I've had at least one or two music videos from each of the albums that I've put out over these last 10 years or so. And I'm currently working with different filmmakers on 4 music videos for the next album. My next album, it's called And Other Unexplained Phenomena. And this is the one I was saying will be out towards the end of the year. And this is kind of my, I don't want to say it's like the big one or something like that, but since 2018, I've had this kind of winding road of where my David Rosen albums have taken me. And at one point I was developing this album and another one at the same time, and it was all going to kind of come out together. And then the pandemic happened. I went in a different direction, and then I got busy with my podcast, and so I went in another direction. And anyway, I'm finally at the point where it like makes sense to release this thing. And combining this and my last album that came out at the beginning of this year, it kind of clears the slate for me, where it's like I have no unreleased, unfinished music, and anything I put out next year or the year after is going to be music I made next year or the year after, which I'm very excited about. It's kind of frustrating to have all these like half-finished ideas that I love and I really want to finish, but like at the same time I want to start new things. And so to be at this like stopping point, it's going to be really, really cool. But yeah, when this album comes out though, I've got a stop motion animated video that I'm working with a local artist on, which is just going to be super, super cool. We're also partnering with a local restaurant. We're just going to be like recreating part of the restaurant in it, and it's going to be super, super cool. And then this other one that's going to be like a film, like with an actress and some really cool effects and stuff and choreography. And so that's coming out. And then I already have 2 other ones that are completed and just waiting to go with 2 other filmmakers. So this has just been a super cool way for me to collaborate with filmmakers, like I said, in the other direction. And then, of course, I've worked with most of these people on their films as well. And so it's kind of that two-way street. And it allows for these tracks which don't have lyrics, but, you know, in my mind, they do kind of have meaning. You know, I obviously titled them all, and they kind of have these ideas to them, but at the same time, they're instrumental. So it's kind of like to be able to convey meaning for these in a visual way really kind of helps elevate them into something a little bit more than just straight up instrumental music. And so, yeah, it's really exciting to be able to put these videos together and to be able to work with these filmmakers in this way. And some of the videos I've made myself too. I'm not like a great video editor or visual artist or anything like that in that way, but I've been able to make at least like a half dozen of them myself that are, you know, using various like stock footage and effects and things like that, just playing around. And I use Vegas Pro is my video editing software, and just messing around essentially, but like with intention and finding my way towards a video and coming up with something that I feel like kind of speaks to the track and again like tells a story in a way. And I've been really proud of those as well, and I'm sure I'll do more of those in the future. But with these 4 that are on the way, I mean, I've got a nice little healthy slate on the way of these music videos, but they've been a really exciting thing for me. And I mean, anyone who grew up when, you know, we all grew up, music videos are just an awesome art form and something I would love to do more with, honestly. As many as I've done, like over, I think 20, maybe even 25 at this point, I'd definitely love to do more and do bigger ideas. Like I said, the stop motion one, that's going to be really, really cool. I've already had one stop motion one. It's one of my favorites, but, you know, I've always loved stop motion, and just trying these really interesting ways of conveying a story is always just so much fun. And you can kind of do anything with music video. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's not a straight up idea or anything like that, but you can try things and you can really be creative and experimental. And I think that's part of why I love it as well.
That is brilliant to collaborate as well. And the idea, especially now for a lot of independent artists, of doing music videos when they do have lyrics is, I've got to rush something out because if I don't, then it's not going to get found because of the algorithm and all of these external worries, rather than here's a really great way to make art with other artists. And that is super exciting. And obviously stop motion is the best, right? That sounds amazing.
Stop motion's so cool. Yeah, it's so cool. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right though. Like, you know, of course, when you usually think of music videos, it's a marketing tool for the album essentially, but it's also a piece of art. And I'm certainly not going to get a crew and a bunch of actors together and shoot a film myself. Like, I'm not a filmmaker, you know, but if I could collaborate with somebody and I have this idea and they can kind of bring that to life, like, we're making something, and it's just super exciting to see it come to life.
That is just such a cool thing. And I think that for someone who doesn't necessarily have existing relationships with people, it's a good way to look for others that, like them, are trying to make it, trying to grow their brand or grow their experience, and just maybe try somebody out and see how it might work out. And that could just be something that continues to grow and then maybe goes the other direction as that budding filmmaker learns, just like you learned with trying different techniques and working with different types of music. It's the same thing for other artists and other mediums. And so that's a really powerful way to help others continue to advance and grow. And then broaden your reach into different areas so that you don't only just work with other musicians and other people who are doing the same thing that you're doing.
Absolutely. And those relationships, they can stay for a long time. There's people I'm working with now. That Buddy Cop movie I mentioned, I've worked with that guy on 10 films now, I think. Yeah, and I've seen him grow as he's grown as a director and the scale and the scope of the films that he's been making. And he's seen me grow. And he's got other composers he works with as well. And whenever he calls me up and he's like, I think you're the right one for this one, it's like, hey, let's go, you know? And so, it's fun to make those like lasting relationships and have people that you can go back to. And of course, they can recommend you and you can recommend them for things too. It's like, it's all about building that relationship and those networks and all that.
Yeah, and sometimes when you're actually growing together, whether it's your different paths or converging paths, then it's amazing to look back and look at some of the people that we consider at the top of their field and think about where they started and who were the contemporaries of some of the people that we just are mind boggled by. And you wouldn't have Spielberg and Lucas, not remotely as well known, obviously, when they started collaborating. So you just don't know where it could go. And it could be an incredible partnership or collection of people who are regularly interacting and just making art. And I think that's pretty special.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So share also about your podcast.
Sure. Yeah. So Piecing It Together is the podcast that I host, and I also produce another movie podcast called Awesome Movie Year. And I've worked on various other podcasts over the years as well, but those are my two ongoing ones at the moment. Piecing It Together is a podcast about movies and what movies might have inspired them. On each episode, a guest and I pick a new release movie and talk about it through that lens. We will each come to the conversation with 4 or 5, we call them puzzle pieces. That's my kind of branding. But puzzle pieces are other movies or sometimes TV shows or other kinds of media that we think were possibly an influence on the film that we're talking about. And it's just a fun, unique way to get into a film. Anybody who's ever had a conversation that's like, oh, that movie is kind of this meets this meets this, you were just on an episode of Piecing It Together, basically, you know? And I've been doing it for 8 years now. It's taken so much time away from my music, but I managed to balance it all and do it at the same time. But it's been a really fun show. And the last 2 years, almost 3 years now, I've been doing live episodes of Piecing It Together at movie theaters. I've managed to get some great relationships with some independent theaters here in Las Vegas where I go in, we schedule in advance, we have a specific movie. Just this past week, we did Sinners, the new Ryan Coogler film, and right after the movie plays, we just get up right there in front of the theater. I've got my microphone set up. I had a panel, in this case, all 3 were filmmakers from here in Las Vegas, and we did the whole show right there in front of the audience that was there for the movie. And yeah, it's been just a really fun way to like get out there and meet people, introduce the show to new audiences, and just really get that audience participation, get that audience immediate feedback on the whole thing. And it's been super fun, even though everybody always asked me before I started it, like, are you going to start a music podcast one of these days? And it's like, I love music. I just don't think I would be right as a host of a music podcast. I do have an idea for one that I might do one day. I don't know. We'll see. But I always tell people when they are thinking about starting a podcast, like, make sure it's something you want to talk about every single week for like hours at a time, because otherwise you are just going to hate doing it, you know? And movies are something that I never want to stop talking about. I am always excited to watch and talk about movies. And so when I started thinking about podcasting, like, it was the right move for me to get into movie podcasts. And yeah, it's a really fun show to do. And I've done over 600 episodes at this point. And I think you're on Captivate too, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's where I found out about your show, is in that Captivate group. But yeah, Captivate's a great hosting platform, and I've been doing this show for so long that it just feels like this is just part of my life now. I'm a composer, like, I'm a musician, that's what I do, but I'm also all day, every day, a podcaster too. I mean, right before we got on this call, I was working on my notes for my next episode I'm recording on Friday. It never ends, but again, it's something that I actually really enjoy doing. And so even though my time between composing and podcasting has been spread so thin, I'm going to keep doing it, you know?
Oh, awesome. And there's always that need to have that other thing, sometimes that other creative outlet, especially as the primary creative outlet starts to take a priority. Then
Yeah.
you need to find, oh, I need another new creative outlet. And so you can see how the through line, though, of course, because of your composing and scoring, that there would be these natural connections that still bring it all together. And yet
Yeah.
they still also have their lanes. And that, I think that's pretty fun. For me, what's been so exciting about this podcast and this idea is I'm just learning so many people's stories that leave my chin on the floor because they're so inspiring, so fascinating, so fun. And it's just such a great thing to be able to have these conversations. I'm just so glad.
Yeah, I bet. It's a great reminder that there's definitely never a straight path with any of this stuff. I'm sure if we talk to anyone from Mozart to Axl Rose, like it's like literally nobody has a straight path in anything related to entertainment. And to kind of go back to what I was saying earlier, where one thing feeds another, I literally in January ended up scoring a film from one of my guests on the podcast. So it's like you just never know. Doing one thing ends up feeding into the other thing, and the other thing feeds into this, and it's like everything just kind of works together in some way. You just might not see it at first.
Yeah, just got to keep your eyes open and see what's going to come of it, and also really enjoy the moment. I think that's a really that's a really important point that you made about you have to you have to like talking about this stuff if you're going to make this a topic and make it something long term. And I think that's also true with music, whether it's doing genres permanently or doing something in a season and maybe having albums or collections that are based on particular genres. And I think that's what's so brilliant too about you having this outlet of the Pup Pups so that you can do this other type of genre. And I actually have an electronic genre project that I have on the side as well that I kind of keep out of my acoustic. And I think it can be a really beneficial thing because you do then every once in a while just get in the middle of a production and then think, I just want to do this other thing. And once I scratch that itch, I can come back and be ready to work on the project that is maybe more pressing, but I have to get this idea, I have to give it its due, not just get it out of the way. I have to give it its due, and it will then bring back dividends. And I know for me, it just makes me then more excited to go back to the other thing because it puts a little space in there.
Yeah, everybody knows, like, I never had writer's block per se, but like everybody knows when you do have writer's block, you're supposed to take a break and go do something else. And so who says that something else can't just be singing about your pets? You know what I mean? Like, it can be just whatever you want it to be. So
that's right. That's for sure. So where can people find out more about you? And we'll have all this in the show notes, of course, but give a little bit of a rundown of how people can support you and get in contact with you.
absolutely. Well, bydavidrosen.com is my main website that has links to everything I do, all my albums, all my film scoring and news about everything that's going on there. Piecingpod.com is for the podcast, Piecing It Together. And you can find all of my albums on Bandcamp. I've got 2 separate Bandcamps for the Pup Pups and for David Rosen. And my YouTube channel is something I've been building up a lot lately. It's got all my music videos, of course. I've been posting clips from my podcast and just all kinds of other stuff. There's also music videos for the Pup Pups, so you get that too. The YouTube is Music by David Rosen on YouTube, and those are kind of the main things right there. I've also been building up a Substack, which I've been starting to do. My mailing list, everybody should work more on their mailing list, I feel like, including me. So
that's really, really true. Then for anyone who is saying, wow, this is quite an interesting journey, I wonder if this is something I should try, what would be your advice for that independent artist in the making?
My advice to every independent artist in the making is always the same thing, and it's to just do stuff. Like, you gotta just do things, because if you don't do anything, you're just sitting around doing nothing, and that's really what it comes down to. Every project I've ever worked on only started because I started messing around on something, and then it was like, oh, maybe this could be a rap song, and next thing you know, I'm making rap music. Or maybe this could be a song that sounds like I'm Bob Dylan and I'm singing about my dog's eyes being big and bright. That turned into the Pup Pups. So you just never know where something's going to go unless you start. You got to just start.
That's for sure. It's been so wonderful talking with you, and actually, you have so many other things. Is there anything that we missed that you really want to talk about?
We kind of talked about the film scoring. We talked about my albums. We talked about the Pup Pups, which I'm just so excited about the new album that's coming out. It's called Another One Already, but you just had one, which is both in reference to Harvey barking at me for snacks and in reference to the fact that the last album just came out 3 months ago. So it's kind of a dual meaning there. For me, it's just always a matter of just continuing to do interesting projects and things that make me happy to work on and then to then go back and listen to after the fact. If I can be happy during both of those, that's double awesome. So I'm super down for that. But yeah, I think we did cover a lot of the stuff that I'm up to.
And I think that should be so motivating for our listeners, because if you love this stuff, if you love what you're doing, you love the art that you're making, you love the music that you're creating, then whatever comes next will just be a reward on top of that.
Yeah, icing. That's it.
You have to love it. You have to love it, or you're going to burn out and it's not going to be what you thought it was. And it's definitely not that everybody's going to be a celebrity. There are actually too many better ways to do music. So just finding those exciting niches and how to be involved in a way that you can do it forever and absolutely love it is super exciting and very motivating.
Yeah, and I don't want to end on a downer or anything like that, but we're in a very weird time right now with AI and everything, and it's like you kind of can't go into any of this stuff with the idea of quote unquote success is going to be, monetary and the way that it comes in. You've got to do it because it's something you really love doing, and then hopefully with a mix of talent, a little bit of luck, a little bit of good networking, a little bit of good communicating with people and all that, and like being like a great collaborator, all the rest of it comes after that. But you got to really love doing it, because otherwise there's a lot of roadblocks along the way. So you got to really want to make music or do whatever thing it is that you're doing in entertainment.
That's for sure. And if you've listened this far, we know that you love making music, and
yeah,
we want to encourage you to continue to do that. So thank you so much, David. This has been a blast. I've really enjoyed talking to you and hearing about all the different types of music you have going on, and I can't wait to share it with our audience.
Right on. Well, thank you so much for having me, Becky.
One of my favorite things about David's story is how freely he allows one creative pursuit to fuel another. Film scoring, albums, comedy rock songs about his pets, they're not distractions. They're building blocks. And like David said, you just gotta start. So here's your takeaway this week. If you're waiting for the right thing to pursue or the perfect idea to execute, don't. Start where you are. Try things. Make stuff. Everything you try teaches you something, and it all adds up to your next breakthrough. And from a branding perspective, this is a great reminder that you don't have to limit yourself to just one identity. If you're an artist with multiple projects or interests, think about how they complement your personal story. Clarity doesn't have to mean confinement. If you love this conversation, be sure to follow the show, leave a review, and share it with a creative friend who needs to hear it. And now, enjoy David Rosen's exciting instrumental track, How to Start a Fire. And as always, keep chasing that second verse.